The Toronto Raptors fired Nick Nurse, and he becomes the first coach in the NBA's history to win a Coach of the Year, an NBA championship, and then to be fired. For Toronto, this had to happen. After 5 years with the team, he was consistently calling out his players, and they didn't buy in. The team was one of the worst to watch. As Masai Ujiri said, I did not enjoy watching this team. You should have not enjoyed watching the team because they sucked. They won 41 games this year. They're one of the worst offenses, and defensively, they just didn't buy in. But there's also another element that I don't think a lot of people look at with this Toronto team, and it's that Nick Nurse never developed their bench. For one of the better starting lineups in the league to never get development from key players, we look down the roster to the G League. Delano Banton is a guy I've loved. He's a 6'9" point forward with some shooting skill he's never developed, and I feel like Nick Nurse hasn't played as guys like Chris Boucher and Precious Achiuwa quite enough to get those reps that they've desperately needed to become quality rotation players. So when you get to the end of the season, it's March. Fred VanVleet's wearing down. He's overburdened as the star point guard that's expected to play make and also hit tough shots at the end of shot clocks. But then Pascal Siakam has one of the toughest jobs in the league, being kind of like Bradley Beal, we were just talking about before, miscast as a number one when his best role is playing off a top 10 player. I think in Toronto, to fire a guy with he had 227 wins to his name to only 163 losses. He made the playoffs in 3 of 5 seasons. This was pretty crazy, but I mean, for a team that's been this successful, they needed to pivot. And now you look at head coaches on the market that can better develop talent, can maximize the team you have, but also buy in. I look at one guy in Golden State by the name of Kenny Atkinson. If the Warriors don't make it out the first rounds, and he wants to build to a place with a great culture, an awesome general manager, maybe the best in the NBA, I think he's the best, and also a brighter future because they know how to develop talent. I think Kenny Atkinson to Toronto would be an awesome destination, given the type of role model, the type of leader they need to add into that locker room. It'd be awesome.
I agree. I completely agree with you. I think certain coaches have their MO, like they have their you can categorize them, and you have your floor raisers, guys that you have a team that's regularly talented but nothing crazy. Like they have the potential to make the playoffs, but most likely they're going to be out of it, and they can make them a 5th seed, aka Doc Rivers. You have guys that are top heavy, that are definitely ceiling raisers, guys that you already established established system, hierarchy of players, and overall just well constructed roster. Steve Kerr, Ime kind of really developed that entire team's defense. So I'm not even gonna put him in that category, but I think a Mike D'Antoni, a Steve Kerr, those guys. And then you have the coaches that are development coaches, guys that you have on your team to help develop your young players. But the moment they're not getting enough, the moment you're at a place where you need to pivot, get them out of here. Those I think are the Dwayne Casey's, the Steven Silas's, those guys. Yeah.
Don't forget. I think there's one more coaching vacancy.
Scott Brooks.
And then there's Dwayne Casey might be the 28th best coach in the league, but the coaching pool today is better than ever before. Dwayne Casey's the 3rd worst coach, and he's always been one of the more solid leaders around the association.
Yes. So
overall, who's going to Toronto?
No, I'm saying Nick Nurse. They need to fire a guy that fits in the ceiling raiser role, where you need to have an established team, established hierarchy, established foundation for him to be effective. He's not a guy that's going to be able to develop talent as well. So I think it's best to get him out of here. But now what I'm wondering is, you get rid of a coach that's one of the best ceiling raisers. What is your are you going to still stay here and keep Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet on this team? Because I think you're working backwards that way then. Because if you're going to bring a developmental coach, but you're going to waste the prime years of Pascal and the lesser years of Fred VanVleet's prime, I think that's an entirely big mistake. At this point, OG's already said he wants a bigger role. He's willing to stay if he gets a bigger role. I say this is when you give him his bigger role, because I do think he's another guy that's trapped in that Mikal Bridges type of role, where it's just like he's really good, but if you give him a chance to be a heavier offensive diet, he could produce a little bit better. I know he was the worst ISO player this year, but we're not doing.
I think you trade his ass to Memphis.
I don't want Memphis to get him. I'm hating just because of that.
You know what though, man? I don't think OG can do it off the catch though. Like, I've seen him attack closeouts, and talk about tunnel vision, a lack of a feel. I don't know if he's going to ever develop that. He's turned 25.
The thing about it, he's always been a great player, but he's never let him ISO above the break or above the three. No, but if you get him, but he's always been able to produce down low in the post, and I think the problem with him not having that feel is because he's never been given the ball in his hands to have enough reps to be that good. That's the problem for me. I don't think he's ever been given the ball to have enough reps to ever actually develop that. Versus somebody like Mikal Bridges, where the other time Debo Chris Paul was out, he was next man up to be a better playmaker. He was given the reps in the first couple of years to actually develop these skills. So I do think at this point is where if you're gonna fire Nick Nurse, this better be where Pascal gets out of here. Either you recoup him for young players or another draft pick. Know who you're gonna get from Memphis. If you do trade OG Anunoby, you're probably gonna get some picks. But Masai's already said they want a young player also, so that entirely depends on what they want to send over there. And I do think now, what's their pick in this draft? Oh, the lottery hasn't even started yet.
13, right at the back end, where they can get a great young top prospect like Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is, if they could crack the top, a guy like Amin Thompson in this draft would be amazing on the Toronto Raptors. Long, lengthy 6'7" point guard, big wingspan, dynamic, can play, really good playmaker. Just needs to develop a jump shot, basically like everybody else on the Toronto Raptors. But I think definitely if you get rid of those, you find a young point guard to help develop next to Scotty Barnes. You give OG Anunoby a little bit more of the shot, a little bit more of a shot diet. At least see what he can get done. Hopefully, he can at least raise his trade value. So if you don't trade him in the offseason, you trade him at the trade deadline. And you move Precious Achiuwa up to that starting 4 role because there's Chris Boucher is like 31, right? There's no more developing him. But Precious Achiuwa, I think, is a guy that definitely has a ton of potential. When he was in Miami, we were playing at the 5, so he wasn't able to display the ability to handle the ball, shoot from outside, and all of that he's showing in Toronto. So I think you give him more time, he develops that. But I don't know what coach you may be able to send to Toronto. What development coaches are on the market right now?
So here's what I'm gonna say. Right, it was a lot. I'm gonna simplify it for you. Toronto's not doing shit. They don't have the stars and they don't have the superstars. Okay, it's that these are just the facts. It's not an insult. That is just the fact of life. Okay. And in terms of the coach, I heard a rumor. Apparently, Ime Udoka is going to be a highly touted candidate for Toronto. That'd be great for Toronto. We saw what he was able to do with Boston. This is Toronto. Kawhi's not walking through those turnstops anytime soon. Okay, Vince Carter ain't coming back. Tracy McGrady's not, a rookie coming up. I'm sorry, but the Raptors, they got their championship in 2019, and they don't have the stars or superstars to compete with the people.
I mean, Scotty Barnes is really promising.
Yeah, he is. As one would say, the championship gravitas is wearing off a little bit. The reality that Brandon's setting in is that the Raptors fooled themselves this season by acquiring Jakob Poeltl and blowing any chance of getting Victor. Like, this was the year, like 2021, where Toronto's reality should have been crystal clear to Masai. Trade a couple of these players to the deadline, not so much that you get great draft equity, but so that you raise your draft odds to get Victor, or let alone Victor, a Cam Whitmore out of Villanova, one of these young, highly touted wings that can be stars, that you pair alongside Scotty Barnes. So you're not overburdening, what would the word be? You're not expecting him to be the franchise face because he most likely won't be Giannis Antetokounmpo, let alone a top 15 player. I think Scotty Barnes will be closer to a 2, a 3 on a quality playoff team. And now, because you missed out on that chance, you move into next year's draft where the 2024 draft class doesn't have a Victor, let alone has a Scoot Henderson. And so they missed their shot, and you're going to have to wait 2 years to get that player through the draft. Players that play in Toronto, they get taxed twice because they're getting taxed for money they make out of the country and then what they make in Canada. So it's not like guys are dying to play in Toronto, but guys are not dying to play in Toronto, but at the same time, you don't have the draft equity. So I feel like Toronto's stuck between a rock and a hard place. You can't really develop these guys as shooters either. So all of these guys you try to find, like Scotty Barnes, try to develop. Like Barnes did not develop at all this year. Shout out to Russell in the chat pointed out. I'm just pretty worried that they're not going to have the opportunity to find that star in the next 2 or 3 years. If that's the case, you got to move Pascal Siakam now while his value is as high as it's going to be. He didn't make All-NBA this year, so he's not Supermax eligible. He began paid $200-some-odd million. Now he's eligible for around $187 million. But man, they got to blow up this team fast. Again, no, he's not making All-NBA. Come on, no way.
No,
I completely forgot that free agents avoid Toronto like the plague for a second. I forgot that. But also, what I didn't notice about this with Scotty Barnes is that you are right. But I think in this specific draft that's coming up with Scotty Barnes already there, if you're already planning to move Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, or any one of those guys, would you not use your 13th pick and one of those guys to move up further in this draft to pick up a Cam Whitmore or a Amin Thompson? Because I know this draft is talented, but I think there's only the 1, 2, or 3 spot that you don't trade away. You don't trade away Vic, you don't trade away Scoot, and you probably don't trade away Brandon Miller. But if you give a team the right offer, I think they will take from four to the end of the lottery. They will take that offer.
Would the Portland Trailblazers send the 5th overall pick to the Toronto Raptors, letting them move up 8 spots if Toronto gives them Pascal Siakam?
Yes.
Portland has a lot.
Portland has this really weird fetish.
Why?
It's not about the fit. It's about how dumb Portland is.
That trade's not going to happen because Damian Lillard, no offense to Pascal, but he's going to look at it and say that's not enough to get me to stay. And Portland
Pascal's a championship number 2, though.
I mean, Dame has no say in staying.
Damian Lillard's not Kawhi Leonard. He's not on Kawhi's level. Okay. Pascal, listen, he's a great player, but Damian's going to look at it and say it's not enough to keep me to stay. And Portland's only going to make a move to bolster their roster if it keeps Damian Lillard in town. If not, they're blowing it up. They're getting rid of Damian Lillard. So that's not going to work.
All right, the fifth pick, I'm going to say a little for Jakob Poeltl and Pascal Siakam.
Oh,
I feel like
that's too much value, I think, to move up 8 spots you're giving up. Now you're getting gypped if you're Toronto. Giving up 2 starters, one's top 25 player in the league.
How old is Jakob?
Jakob's 27.
I'm saying he's already becoming on the older side. And I don't think he's going to fit your timeline for a win now type of for win.
Jakob's a free agent, so they can't trade Jakob this offseason.
Oh, he's a free agent? Oh, yeah. What I'm saying is Portland desperately needs a 5 and they desperately need a secondary scorer. And I think Pascal and Jakob would fit that perfectly.
Right.
Portland. The thing with Portland's team is that it's not that they suck. It is that they suck, but it's that the problems they have are very fixable. They just don't have the assets to fix them until now. You have the draft pick. You have the asset. I think right now, especially when Kevin Durant was up, I'm saying immediately as soon as Kevin Durant was tradable, if KD was cared about going to Toronto, I would have said, okay, then Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, get out of here. We getting KD, put it next to Damian Lillard. I would understand that completely. Yeah, and I think that's a trade that is of fair value with the Brooklyn one that they got. So, Pascal, it just depends on how good you think Pascal is. I'm high on Pascal. I'm saying this year Pascal was a top 15, top 20 player, top 15 player in the league.